All right, so our final continent is also a country and it is an island. All right, so let's see if we can do a review first. See if I can find my map here. All right, so this is our map. I'm gonna get really close. So we started here where we live, North America, then we went South America, then we flew over to Europe, we went down to Africa, then we covered this great big continent of Asia, and today we're gonna flip down to Australia. So see, it's a continent all by itself, it's an island, and it's also a country. And then of course we have this big continent down here full of ice, which is Antarctica. Very good. All right, so Australia. Welcome to Australia. Australia is the world's smallest continent. So we had Asia, which had the most people and land mass. Okay, now the smallest continent is Australia. It's both a continent and a country. And this is a picture of Uluru National Park. So you know how I like to pronounce these names? All right, and so they're hiking in the national park there in Australia. The largest piece of land on Earth are called continents. There are 7, and then Australia, we said, was located here in the yellow. Okay, and the blue, who remembers? The blue around the world. Ocean. So most of the world is ocean. People of Australia. Most people in Australia live in big cities. Okay, so where do they live? Most people are in big cities. So think of New York City or Philadelphia or Los Angeles. Okay, where there's lots and lots and lots of people. Not really Lancaster. Lancaster City is a city, but it's not big like New York City. So when you think of the cities in Australia, big cities, lots of people, because that's where most of the people are going to live. Okay, and one way they get from one place to another is through the monorail. I think that's pretty cool. So a subway goes underground in cities. A monorail actually travels above the road. So this would be above the road up into the building. So I think it will stop at the top here and you can walk into the building way up, like halfway up the building. I think that's really cool. I might have to visit Australia just to see the monorail. That I think is so cool. Some people in Australia live in the country on farms and ranches. Okay, so there is parts that are ranches and farms, but it's hard living. That's why most of the people live in the city, because the ranches and it's hot in Australia and the land is kind of barren in places and more like a deserty area. And so it's not an easy living, but they do have lots of ranches, especially it looks like a sheep ranch out in Australia, and lots of horses. Australia's first people are called Aborigines. They have many traditions from long ago. Okay, so this is a special dance that an Aborigine child is performing, and they like to paint themselves up too. Sounds like fun, painting yourself and dancing. Koalas live in trees. They eat the leaves and they sleep most of the time. So this looks like a really cool animal. A koala, oh my goodness, I should probably have a nap. Koala means no drink. So the koalas don't really drink a lot like you would think of an animal drinking in a stream or river. They eat leaves and branches that are wet and have the water in them. So they're not really big drinkers. Instead, they eat a lot of plants that would have liquid form inside the plants. Land and water. The center of Australia is dry, and it's called the outback. The outback is hot during the day and cold during the night. So does that remind you of our habitat the desert. So Australia would have desert in the outback, a lot of hot and dry area. So in the daytime, it would be very, very hot. But then at night, if you don't have something to keep you warm, you would get too cold. All right? And not a lot of people live in the outback. The Uluru Rock is in the outback. It's the largest rock in the world. So a single rock. This is the largest. It's one single rock. Okay, when you go outside and you see a rock in your driveway or in your grass, see how big that one is. And then look at this one. It would be bigger than a house. One rock that you normally could hold in your hand. This one. So that's why it's famous and people go out to see it in Australia, because it's the world's largest rock. Australia has forests with tall trees and many plants. Some are found nowhere else in the world. So you have the city in Australia where most of the people live, and then you have, outside of that, you have a few ranches and farms out in the country area, but it's hard living, and so that's why you don't have as many ranchers and farmers, but there are some. And then you have the outback where very few people live. It's desert living, very hard desert living. And then you have a forest area, all right? This is the eucalyptus tree. It grows in Australia, and eucalyptus is known as a healing plant. You use it in a lot of medicines, and there's a eucalyptus tea you can drink as well. So it's a very herbal tree that you can use for different things. Australia is home to the Great Barrier Reef. So remember, Australia is surrounded by the ocean. It's an island, so it's completely surrounded. So then you would have the ocean, and inside the ocean you would have ocean animals. So they have the Great Barrier Reef. It's the largest or the biggest coral reef in the world. Beautiful coral and many kinds of fish live in the Great Barrier Reef, right? So when we studied our ocean, we didn't really have a whole lot of time to discuss coral, right? But you find it down in the water, okay? Rain falls in Australia, low mountain areas. It also has low mountains, and it creates waterfalls. So in those low mountain areas, there's lots of, when the rain comes, it comes in great big downpours. So they don't have rain, and then when it comes heavy. And then when it does that, it will create waterfalls, and the water flows to the ocean that surrounds this tiny continent. So when the rain comes, it comes down over the lower mountains and forms waterfalls. Isn't that pretty? But then when the rain flows down into the ocean, the rain goes away, then it dries back up. Modern marvels. The Sydney Opera House is Australia's most famous building. Its roof was made in curved shapes. Okay, each roof section weighs up to 15 tons. That's as big as 2 big elephants. Okay, so each section on this roof, each section on this curved roof, so this section here, weighs 2 elephants. Think of 2 elephants, and that's how much each section weighs, all right? So this is the Sydney Opera House. It's very famous. People go to Australia to watch a play or someone sing inside the Opera House, all right? So it's very famous. Platypuses live in the lakes, swamps, and rivers in Australia. They have a bill like a duck, webbed feet, and they're mammals because they're mammals, but they don't have live babies. Instead, they lay eggs. So they're a funny mammal. And this is a platypus. All right, and here are some other animals you will find in Australia. A kangaroo and a koala. And then this is the picture of the outback, and this is the waterfalls to remind you of the waterfalls that come only when it rains. All right, so that is our continent of Australia and the country of Australia. All right, and lots of interesting facts. So I've also included in today's lesson a video of interesting animals that you find in Australia. I thought you would like to see these interesting animals. And then I also have the map, because this will be our only lesson on the continent of Australia and the country of Australia, all right? But don't forget, on Friday is our Zoom for the 7-continent day. So you will get to represent a continent. Now, if you decide you're going to be a princess from a certain continent, what I'd like you to do is to have the flag of that continent. Or if you're a soccer player from a certain continent, if you could at least have a picture of the flag of that continent or a country, if you're from a particular country in the continent, that would be good. All right, so we want to represent the 7 continents, and we'll have fun with our Zoom on Friday. All right, have fun with the next video and coloring the map.